The house was wrapped in silence, lit only by the faint glow of the kitchen light that still remained on. It was nearly midnight. Outside, the street seemed to breathe to a different rhythm. Laughter echoed, engines roared, and distant music leaked from a parked car nearby, calling out to a night of partying. Inside the bedroom, the scene was completely different. The little 2-year-old girl slept soundly in her crib. Her tiny hands clutched tightly to the old soft blanket that already carried the scent of childhood. Her thin, messy hair stuck to her sweaty forehead, and her breathing was calm, that soft and innocent sound only such a small child could make. The mother, however, stood in front of the mirror. She applied lipstick with steady hands, adjusted her short skirt, checked every detail of her hair and makeup. In her eyes, there was only eagerness to leave, to have fun, to feel free. There was no room for worry. The buzz of a notification on her phone made her smile. "Come on, the party's already lit." The message read. She took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and before leaving, pushed the bedroom door open slightly. The little girl stirred, letting out a sleepy whimper, as if trying to call someone. For a brief moment, the mother's gaze lingered there, but there was no tenderness, no hesitation. Just a quick glance, hurried, like someone checking something off to ease their conscience. She didn't say goodnight. She didn't offer a caress. She just closed the door slowly, leaving the room swallowed by darkness. In the living room, the keys jingled between her fingers until they found the lock. The dry click of the latch echoed louder than it should have. It was the sound of a final decision, a sound that sealed the fate of the sleeping child. Outside, the street pulsed with life. A car waited with its headlights on and music blaring. A group laughed, impatient, ready for fun. She ran to them, laughing too, as if it were just another ordinary night. But inside that house, the contrast was cruel. A 2-year-old child remained alone, surrendered to silence, to the cold, and to the dark. A child who couldn't even speak properly yet, who still needed help just to drink water, who had no way to understand abandonment. As the mother walked farther down the sidewalk, the little one stirred again in her crib. Her eyes opened for a moment, heavy with sleep, glistening with tears, and her mouth moved in a fragile call, almost a whisper. "Mommy." But there was no one there to hear. The night had begun. A night that would not end the same for that family. The night dragged on slowly, as if each minute crawled across the clock in the living room. Outside, the streetlights faded one by one, the sound of cars grew distant, and silence took over the neighborhood. Inside the house, however, a sound broke the stillness. The fragile cry of a child. The little girl had woken up frightened. Her eyes, still blurred with sleep, searched the shadows of the room for a familiar figure, a hug, a soft voice to soothe her. But there was no one. Only emptiness. "Mommy." She mumbled between sobs, her speech still unclear, as she had barely learned how to form words. She pulled the blanket up to her chest and cried louder, waiting for her mother to rush in and scoop her into her arms. Minutes passed, but the bedroom door never opened. With every second of waiting, fear grew inside her. With unsteady steps, she climbed out of the crib, stumbling on the cold floor. The house seemed enormous and terrifying in the shadows of the night. Every shadow was a monster. Every creak of the wood sounded like a scream. The little girl wandered through the living room, calling softly, "Mommy, Daddy." But her father was at work, unaware of what was happening, and her mother, somewhere far away, was dancing and laughing, lost in the glow of a party. In the silence, the child's stomach began to ache. Hunger gnawed at her. She tried to reach the table, where an empty bottle had been left behind, but couldn't. Tears streamed down her reddened cheeks from so much crying. She sat on the floor, clutching the blanket as if it were her only comfort. The night pressed on relentlessly. The cold of the early morning slipped through the cracks of the window, and the girl's frail body trembled. The loneliness was not only physical but a crushing weight no child her age could bear. Outside, far away, her mother's laughter blended with loud music. Inside, the sound was different. The persistent sobs, the gasping cries of a child who couldn't understand why she had been left alone. And that night, the little girl's fear only grew. At the very moment his daughter was crying alone inside the house. Miles away, the father was working another night shift. He labored in a factory, surrounded by the relentless noise of the machines, the smell of burnt oil, and the exhaustion that never seemed to leave him. He was a simple man, with calloused hands and tired eyes, but there was always a special spark whenever he spoke about his daughter. During breaks, his coworkers would gather around, and with pride he showed them photos on his phone. The little girl laughing, the little girl trying to walk, the little girl clinging to the old blanket she refused to let go of. "She's my life, you know?" he said to a colleague, smiling. "I can endure anything, any sleepless night, just to see her grow up happy." As he spoke, the roar of the machines seemed to fade into the background. In that instant, all that existed was the memory of his daughter's smile. He thought about how good it would feel to return home, to hold her in his arms and breathe in that childlike scent that seemed to heal every problem. What he didn't know was that, at that very moment, his daughter was calling for him in vain, lost in the darkness of the house. He believed she was safe, peacefully asleep in her crib, protected. Among his coworkers, he spoke about the future. "I want to give her everything I never had. A good school, a better life. I work for her. Only for her." And his voice trembled slightly, as if that love were so strong it could barely be contained within his chest. But the cruel irony of fate was that, while he dreamed of tomorrow, the present was already unraveling. His daughter's destiny was being written that very night, without him hearing it, without him being able to run to save her. He looked at the clock. Only a few more hours left in his shift. He took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and went back to work, repeating to himself that soon he'd be home, that soon he'd be able to hug his little girl. Unaware that hug would never come. The night pressed on mercilessly. The clock struck nearly 4 in the morning. Outside, the street no longer carried voices or cars. Only the distant bark of a dog mixed with the cold that seemed to cut through the air. Inside the house, the little girl was still alone. Her eyes were swollen from so much crying, and her voice came out faint, almost gone. Her frail body trembled. Wrapped in the blanket, she dragged from one corner of the living room to another, as if it were her last link of protection against the vast emptiness around her. She tried once more to reach the kitchen sink, where she knew there was sometimes water left in a forgotten bottle. She stretched out her arms, leaned against a chair, but the effort was greater than her strength. The object slipped and crashed to the floor, scattering into a silence that felt even more cruel. Frightened, the girl stumbled and fell. The crying came back, desperate, but with no one to hear it. She choked on her own tears, struggling to catch her breath. Air seemed to escape her, her tiny heart racing out of control. And then came silence. A deadly silence. The house, once filled with the sounds of innocence, sank into a shadowy stillness. The clock ticked on indifferently, marking the seconds of an irreversible fate. Outside, the night carried on. Somewhere far away, the mother was still dancing, laughing loudly, unaware of the gravity of her choice. The father, at work, wiped the sweat from his brow, believing his daughter was safe, sleeping peacefully in her crib. But inside that cold house, the tragedy had already unfolded. The child's room, with its scattered toys and empty crib, now held only absence. An emptiness so heavy it seemed to scream. The little girl's life faded away in silence, without witnesses, without comfort. An ordinary night for the world outside. But inside that house, it was the end of everything. The day was beginning to break, but for him, it was still the middle of the night. His shift had finally ended, and the father, exhausted, was about to shut down the machines and get ready to go home. His weary mind was already thinking about breakfast, his daughter's smiles, how she would probably be sleeping peacefully, like every morning he imagined. Then the phone rang. A sharp, urgent sound that cut through the factory and made him freeze. He answered, smiling, unsuspecting of what was coming. "Hello." On the other end, the voice was steady but heavy, carrying a weight that made his heart race. "Sir, it's about your daughter. She did not survive." For a moment, nothing made sense. The words floated, strange and unreal. He gripped the phone tightly, as if he could pull reality back into something understandable. "What?" He managed to stammer, his voice breaking. "No, it can't be. We need you to come to the station immediately." The voice continued, trying to remain professional, but unable to hide the gravity of the situation. The floor seemed to collapse beneath his feet. Every passing second was a nightmare without escape. His mind refused to accept it, searching for some explanation that didn't exist, some mistake that could undo the tragedy. But there was none. He ran to his car, eyes brimming with tears, breath ragged, not even fastening his seatbelt. Every traffic sign, every stoplight, felt like an eternity. His daughter was dead. The little life he had dreamed of protecting, the girl he loved more than anything, had been taken away by a negligence he couldn't control. When he arrived home, his heart nearly stopped. The door was closed, the silence heavy, unlike any other morning. Outside, the world carried on its indifferent rhythm. But for him, everything had ended. And when the door opened for the police, when he finally saw the scene that confirmed what he had been told on the phone, despair took hold. A scream stuck in his throat, tears burning his face, trembling hands reaching for something that would never return. His life, his daughter's life, and the future he had dreamed of, all had turned into silence and pain. He ran into the house, his heart hammering in his chest, each step heavier than the last. The world seemed frozen. Toys scattered across the floor, the empty crib, the crumpled blanket. Everything was exactly where she had left it, except for her. His daughter was no longer there. His body shook, knees almost giving way. He tried to hold himself together, but the pain was physical, burning in every muscle. The scream he wanted to release was stuck in his throat. No, this can't be true. He murmured through tears, collapsing to his knees on the cold living room floor. The mother came in moments later, her face still streaked with last night's smudged mascara, a vacant smile fading as she took in his expression. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. He lifted his eyes, full of pain, and pointed toward their daughter's room, unable to form complete words. Every muscle in his body screamed with rage, grief, and disbelief. "She, our daughter." He managed to stammer. "Where were you?" Shock spread across her face. The party, the music, the fleeting freedom, all dissolved in the face of brutal reality. I, she began, but there were no words that could undo what had happened. He felt a storm of emotions. Sadness, anger, guilt, helplessness. Everything twisted into an unbearable knot. How could someone make such a selfish choice that cost their own daughter's life? How could he, who had always dreamed of protecting her, face this? Every detail of the house seemed to scream the absence of the little girl. The crib, the scattered toys, the blanket that still held her scent. He clung to them, desperate, feeling her absence in an overwhelming, crushing way. Tears flowed uncontrollably. The father felt the weight of it all. The irreversible loss, the mother's responsibility, and the impossible emptiness that could never be filled. The world he knew was collapsing, and nothing would ever be the same. The night that began with a thoughtless choice now ended in absolute silence, with a pain that would never be forgotten. The days that followed were long and silent. The clock seemed to have stopped for the father as he wandered through the empty house, touching his daughter's toys as if he could feel her presence again. Every room reminded him of lost innocence. Every object held memories that now hurt more than they comforted. The mother disappeared for a few hours, unable to face the pain she had helped create. When she returned, the tension was unbearable. The father's gaze, heavy with sadness and anger, confronted her silently. Words felt small against the chasm that had opened between them. He could not forgive and perhaps never would. Grief consumed him in different ways each day. At work, colleagues noticed his absence, his distraction, the quiver in his voice. He tried to maintain routine, but every sound, every gesture, reminded him of the daughter who would never return. At night, in absolute silence, he cried alone, holding the blanket that still carried her scent. Even amid overwhelming pain, he began to realize something. Life had to go on, but in a different way. Every gesture, every memory, was a tribute to the little girl he loved with all his heart. He decided to fight to transform the tragedy into remembrance and care for those still around him. The tragedy left deep scars, but it also taught a cruel lesson about responsibility and love. Thoughtless decisions can destroy innocent lives. The father would carry his daughter in his heart forever, like a star that had gone out but still illuminated the memory of those who loved her. And so life continued, forever marked by the absence of a smile, by the silence of a laugh that would never echo again, and by the weight of a guilt that no one else could share. The world kept turning, but for him, nothing would ever be the same. The memory of his daughter remained alive, like a silent scream in the early morning, a reminder that love and loss sometimes walk side by side.